In the second year of my arranged marriage to my childhood friend, his white moonlight returned, but I unexpectedly lost my memory. When I woke up, he was uncharacteristically gentle and affectionate. Not only did he kiss my fingertips, but he also told me that our life as a couple was very harmonious. He even did so when I clutched my pillow, trying to enter his bedroom. Yet he asked me with an unreadable expression if I was certain. However, when I remembered everything and planned to leave, he actually double-locked the door to trap me inside. He demanded to know if I was going to find my senior. But I simply told him with a smile, the people we each love are each other. In the second year of my arranged marriage to my childhood friend, his white moonlight returned. At the same time, I was involved in a car accident and suffered from amnesia. When I woke up again, he had abandoned his usual coldness, tenderly kissing my fingertips. You don't need to remember anything. You just need to know that our life as a married couple is very harmonious. But that night, when I stood at his bedroom door clutching my pillow, he stared at me with an unreadable, dark expression, his voice husky. "Are you sure you want to come in?" Later, I remembered everything. Just as I was melancholy packing my bags to leave, I ran into him coming home drunk. He quietly double-locked the room door and approached me with a half-smile. "What? Planning to go find that senior of yours? Do you really think I'm dead?" "What do you remember?" Jason Smith asked. I lay on the hospital bed and shook my head. "You don't remember anything at all?" He gazed deep into my eyes for a long while before taking my ID photos and other documents to piece together my background for me. Finally, he lifted my hand, kissing my fingertips with a slow, lingering tenderness. "Don't be afraid if you can't remember. All you need to know is that our life as a married couple is very harmonious." I wasn't sure if he was implying something else, but I couldn't stop the heat from rising to my face. Feeling a bit shy, I whispered to confirm. "Are we very much in love?" A final kiss landed on my wrist. The look in Jason's eyes was like ink that wouldn't dissolve. Of course. Perhaps it was because his gaze was so sincere, or perhaps because the way he kissed me felt so practiced and familiar. Without much doubt, I chose to believe him. I was a bit clingy toward Jason, at least. That was the doctor's assessment. "It's likely because you're the first person she saw after her memory loss," leading to a sense of attachment. Following the doctor's orders, Jason took my hand to lead me downstairs for a walk. As the cold wind hit my face, I couldn't help but shiver. Cold? He let go of my hand, intending to drape his overcoat over my shoulders. I think Jason's emotional intelligence is strangely low. I reached out and pressed down on his hand. The next second, I wrapped my arms around his waist and tucked myself into his embrace. "This way, neither of us will be cold," I said, looking up from his chest to teach him a lesson. Then, unable to help myself, I questioned him with a hint of aggrieved accusation. "Jason, do you really love me? Why don't you ever really hold me?" Jason's eyes darkened instantly. By the time I sensed the aura of danger, it was already a bit too late. Jason carried me directly into a deserted corner. Tilting my chin up, his kiss descended upon me. "I love you." A second before my breath was stolen away, I heard him murmur in a low voice. His cool tone, colored by the enchanting atmosphere, actually carried a hint of suppressed passion. "How dare you say I don't love you?" I clung to Jason's shoulders, dizzily accepting his kiss. Midway through, he paused briefly. His kisses wandered, leaving a dense trail across my cheek. "Is this uncomfortable for you?" I pursed my lips, my temperature rising until I felt like a boiled shrimp. "I don't think I'm very good at kissing," I said, enduring my shyness to consult teacher Jason. Did I forget how? Or was it always like this before? Jason wrapped his coat around me anyway. He was wearing only a thin shirt. His hand rubbed against my flushed earlobe, but he didn't answer. When he spoke again, his voice carried a low, raspy hint of seduction. "Then do you want to try again, Belle? This time, you take the lead." Jason wanted me to be proactive and kiss him the way he had kissed me. I hoped someone would pass by and rescue me from this overwhelming situation. But this place was too secluded. There wasn't a soul in sight. After a month together, I had seen all of Jason's kindness toward me. He was a meticulous and devoted husband. I should probably be a bit nicer to him too. Then lean down a little. "I can't reach." The last few words were as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Jason gave a shallow laugh and cooperated by lowering his head. I slowly leaned in and, mimicking his style, kissed him awkwardly. The man's grip around me tightened. A few days before I was discharged, a strange young man came to visit. Jason happened to be out buying porridge at the time. He said he was Larry, a senior from my second year of graduate school. He sighed and joked, "I'll be very sad if you don't remember the experiment we were halfway through. I took his lab notes from him, but the procedures didn't feel unfamiliar at all. I seem to be quite acquainted with this. I should be able to get back into it within a few days." Larry finally breathed a sigh of relief and smiled as he raised his hand. He was moving to pat my head. "What are you doing?" I happened to frown and dodge Larry's outstretched hand, looking behind him. Jason was standing by the door with a half smile. His tone was gentle, but his eyes were clouded with gloom. "This is my husband." Larry shrugged indifferently. "So what?" Jason didn't even give me time to be shocked. He directly pressed Larry's head down into the sink in the hospital room with one hand. Jason usually appeared to be a very refined man. I didn't expect him to have such violent moments. "What's wrong?" Jason asked, back with a smile. "Shall I help you clear your head? Don't open your mouth again until you understand what husband means." The next second, he turned on the faucet, letting the bone-chilling water pour over Larry's head. I was finally snapped back to my senses by Larry's cries. I scrambled out of bed, not even stopping to put on shoes, and went to pull at Jason's hand. Okay, don't be angry anymore. Hurry up and let him go." Jason remained unmoved, his eyes still indifferent, without a trace of emotion. I glanced at Larry, who looked like he was about to suffocate. In my desperation, I grabbed Jason's arm. "Husband." Jason paused. He finally loosened his grip and stared at me with an unreadable expression. Larry recovered his composure, and like a Monday morning quarterback, raised his fist again. "You I stepped in front of Jason, my expression cold. "Senior, you were the one who lacked boundaries first. You have nothing to complain about after getting hit. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Larry paused, staring at me meaningfully. "Isabel, regarding your past memories, you really ought to listen to someone else's version." His gaze shifted toward Jason. "Is a one-sided story really trustworthy?" Having said his piece, he slumped his dejected frame and slammed the door as he left. "Why are you walking around without shoes?" The hostility surrounding Jason had completely vanished. He picked me up and carried me back. My attention was diverted, and I temporarily forgot Larry's words. I wrapped my arms around his neck, not in a hurry to let go. As our eyes met, my eyes crinkled into a smile. "Hubby." The man froze instantly. "You really like it when I call you that, don't you?" Jason didn't answer. He leaned in and kissed me directly. He gave me no time to catch my breath, prying my teeth apart immediately. By the time Jason finally let me go, I was feeling lightheaded from a lack of oxygen. He lightly bit my lower lip, his voice deep and low. "Say it again." I could feel his palms starting to burn with heat. So, I obediently retreated back to the safety zone. I would stop provoking him. I looked at him and blinked, my voice sounding muffled. "Jason, during my hospitalization, while gradually getting to know myself, I also discovered a problem. Jason and I never got round to taking our wedding photos. One day, after being discharged, I finally cleared my schedule. I went to the office to find Jason to discuss a date. "Mr. Jason, I've been so tired all morning. I can't work at all anymore. Can I just skip work this afternoon?" I stood frozen at the door, watching a girl fluttering around Jason like a lark, chirping away. Jason sat in his executive chair. He didn't agree, but he didn't reject her proximity either. I suddenly felt as though I had overlooked many details. At that moment, the girl looked up and caught sight of me. She stood up haughtily and brushed past me to leave. The moment Jason looked up at me, the indifference in his eyes instantly melted into tenderness. He approached and wrapped both of his hands around mine. "Why are they so cold?" As he spoke, he lifted my hand to his lips and gave it a light touch. He prompted softly. I didn't move, staring at him for a long while before finally speaking slowly. "Jason, I want to hear the truth." I paused for a few seconds, bracing myself for any possible outcome. "Before I lost my memory, did you really like me? Please, don't lie to me." Jason's eyes flickered, and his grip suddenly tightened. I winced and let out a soft hiss of pain. He seemed to snap back to his senses immediately, loosening his hold before pulling me tightly into his arms. "Belle, never doubt my feelings for you," he whispered. pressing a flurry of kisses into my hair. He moved downward, his kisses falling on my eyelids, the tip of my nose, and finally the corner of my lips. I love you. Our eyes met, and I saw his sanity hanging by a thread. I love you, Belle, he repeated, his voice trembling. The sorrow in his eyes was almost enough to burn me. I listlessly returned his embrace. I'm sorry, Jason. Jason explained to me that the girl was his cousin, and she had never gotten along with me in the past. No wonder she had rolled her eyes at me earlier. Just then, there was a knock on the office door. Mr. Jason, I'm really not coming in this afternoon. It was the little cousin's voice. Get lost. You don't need to come in ever again, Jason replied expressionlessly. Immediately after, I felt a kick against the door. A voice yelled from outside. You're unbelievable! I was still immersed in the shock that the girl dared to curse at Jason when he kissed me, stealing my breath away. Jason pulled my hands to loop them around his neck, calling my name over and over in a soft voice. Belle, Belle. I was dazed, stung by the inadvertent trace of humility in his tone. And so, as the sky grew completely dark, I clutched my pillow and knocked on Jason's door. The man stood there, hand braced against the doorframe. I deliberated for a few seconds, choosing what I thought was the most tactful phrasing. I think I'm a little bit scared to be alone. I looked up, my gaze burning as I watched him. His cuff hung loosely. There seemed to be a storm brewing in Jason's eyes. His voice was low and husky. Are you sure you want to come in? Ever since I returned home from the hospital, Jason had been sleeping in a separate room on the grounds that I hadn't fully recovered. But I knew perfectly well that I was fine. Jason. I took a slow step toward him, but didn't enter. Do you want me to come in? Jason's answer was to pick me up and carry me directly into the room. Then, I was wrapped in the quilt like a silkworm cocoon. Jason pulled me close from behind. I pried open a corner of the quilt, turned my head, and asked cautiously, Jason, the reason you're making me stay in a separate room, is it because you have a problem down there? I felt that between husband and wife, we should be honest with each other. Moonlight and shadows intertwined, falling into Jason's eyes. He suppressed all emotion. Where? His voice was flat and calm. I stared at him without speaking. How could he not know what I was referring to? Jason frowned slightly, appearing to be in deep thought. My leg? He asked hesitantly. I stared at him for a few more seconds, then suddenly made a bold decision. My hand reached out from under the covers, slowly inching closer. I'll just check for myself, and then I'll know, I said, my voice growing softer, even as my courage grew bolder. A second before I made contact, he caught my wrist. In the darkness, Jason kneaded my hand with a measured pressure. What exactly does Belle want to check? He asked. Say it out loud, and I'll let you touch. He's insane. I whipped my hand back and rolled deep into the duvet. I don't want to check anything. I suspect Jason has a penchant for dirty talk. He is truly impossible to read. He seemed to exist between two extremes. He was a self-restrained, disciplined gentleman. Yet he would occasionally reveal glimpses of covetous desire. On the day of the wedding dress fitting, I arrived before Jason and happened to run into Larry, who was working there part-time. He said a lot of rambling, nonsensical things, but only one sentence left a deep impression. The way you defended your husband that day was quite out of character, he added. I don't know much, but I heard you say during a game of truth or dare once that both you and your husband have other people you like. Standing alone in the dressing room, I lost myself in thought, playing those words over and over in my head. You're changed. Why haven't you come out? Jason had entered the dressing room silently and was now standing behind me. I snapped back to reality, my eyes meeting Jason's in the mirror. I just ran into Larry, the student from last tea. I know, Jason interrupted nonchalantly. I blinked in surprise. Then, an arm wrapped around me, pulling me back into his embrace. He lowered his gaze, leaning close to the back of my ear. On you, he murmured, his warm breath making me shudder involuntarily. Is the scent of a man's cologne. After saying that, he gave a light nip. Jason, I protested, raising my hand to push him away, only stopping his movements with my complaint. He said I once admitted myself that both you and I have people we like. I regained my composure and looked up at him. Jason probably hadn't expected me to be so direct. He froze for a split second. He pursed his lips tightly, waiting for my reaction. Beneath his calm gaze, I could still see a flicker of unease. I don't think he's necessarily wrong, I said. The people we each like happen to be each other. It can be understood that way too, right? I intentionally took my time explaining, looking at Jason teasingly. But to my surprise, he didn't relax upon hearing this. His eyes remained dark and bottomless. Jason, I called out softly, testing the waters. After a long silence, he lowered his eyes and finally spoke. That's not right, Isabel. I paused, my smile freezing on my face. You never liked me. I lied to you. I'm sorry. And now, I don't want to continue this deception anymore. From beginning to end, Jason never looked up, keeping all his emotions hidden. I didn't react immediately, simply staring at him in shock. He didn't wait for my answer. After 2 seconds of silence, he spoke again. I'll have a driver take you back. A slight tremor leaked through his voice. I watched his retreating back, and before my brain could even process it, I chased after him. Jason. Outside the bridal shop, I caught up to Jason, just as he was about to open his car door. He stopped and turned around. Did you ever do anything to wrong me in the past? Or were you ever terrible to me? He stared at me intently. Though he didn't understand my abrupt question, he answered without hesitation. No. Then after we get married, will you only love me? I was still wearing the unpaid wedding dress, stubbornly clutching his arm. Jason's voice was low and husky. I loved you, even before we got married, he added softly. It has always been, and only ever been, you. When Jason was confessing earlier, his emotions were as stable as a neglected ruin, deadly silent. It was only by brushing aside the debris that I caught a glimpse of the gasping life beneath. Jason, I said, keeping my voice as gentle as possible. Can you manage not to lie to me anymore from now on? I suddenly had the misplaced thought that I seemed to be coaxing a child. Jason likely understood what I meant. He gazed at me intently. Okay. His voice melted into the wind, brushing past my ear. I curled my lips into a smile and pulled him back toward the bridal shop. I like you now, too, so I forgive you for this little mistake. And another thing next time. Can you wait for me to finish speaking before you leave? Don't just finish overthinking everything on your own, and then retreat back into your shell. How dramatic. I thought that after this heart-to-heart, Jason would change somewhat, but he still held his defensive line firmly. That night, I was wrapped tightly by him in a separate quilt, like a silkworm pupa, unable to break its cocoon. Jason, I'm serious. I took a deep breath, suppressing my anger. If you really have a problem, don't avoid the doctor. Jason switched into his shameless mode. He gave a faint hum of agreement. I have a problem. I can't do it. He insisted that he wouldn't touch me until I regained my memory. Essentially, it was the deep-seated insecurity in his bones that made him disbelieve. I would still love him once my memory returned. Progress on conquering Jason had come to a standstill. I thought Jessica Miller's appearance would be a stumbling block. I didn't expect her to be a catalyst. Inside Jason's office, I was curled up on the sofa eating potato chips. Jessica, waiting for Jason's meeting to end, was playing the role of a mother quite well. I'm sorry, but please don't get the sofa dirty. Jason is a clean freak. This woman was not only the representative of the collaborating party who had just returned to the country, but she was also clearly very close to Jason. I obediently put away my potato chips and looked at Jessica innocently. Sister, you really care about Jason. So why didn't you marry Jason? Is it because you don't like him? Just how stiff Jessica's smile was could be seen from the way the powder was caking around her lips. It wasn't until I had finished half a can of soda that she finally managed to formulate a retort. Jessica scoffed. You're just a little loser who gets a few $100 in allowance and hasn't even graduated or found a job. How long do you think Jason can like you? It's just a temporary novelty. Just as she finished speaking, the door behind her was pushed open. Jessica tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and turned around. Jason. Before she could finish, her voice was drowned out by mine. Jason. I hopped off the sofa and ran to Jason with a pitiful expression. I squeezed out 2 tears. Sister Jessica said I'm a loser. I stole a glance at Jessica as I spoke. She was looking at me in utter disbelief. I could tell she really wanted to award me an Oscar. Jason raised his hand to stroke the back of my head, then lifted his eyes to look indifferently at the flustered woman. Miss Jessica, since you have the leisure to chat with my wife, does it mean your company is confident about delivering ahead of schedule? Jessica shook her head sluggishly. No, Jason, Miss Jessica, I don't believe we are on such familiar terms. Jessica was left speechless. I added fuel to the fire in my gentlest tone. It doesn't matter if I don't have a job. My husband makes enough money that I couldn't spend it all in my next lifetime, Sister Jessica. Jessica's lecture came reflexively. That's his money, not yours. Don't you have any sense of self-reliance? I looked at her with feigned confusion. But I can spend his money. So why would I want to work a 9-to-5 job and suffer for someone else? Oh, just like you do. Jessica's ears rang from the retort. In the end, she said nothing, grabbed her bag, and left. Admittedly, I only said that to spite her. I didn't actually plan on being a parasite for the rest of my life. A master's degree shouldn't go to waste. The moment Jessica left, Jason picked me up and sat me down in his swivel chair. I sat on his lap, dodging his kiss. What are you trying to do? Jason rubbed my chin, his gaze dropping. I want to kiss you. I cupped his face, gave him a quick peck, and retreated instantly. There. Jason's Adam's apple bobbed as he leaned in again. Not enough. I backed away with a smile. It's enough. Jason, your health isn't great right now. Kissing will only make you feel worse. Wait until you've recovered and built up your strength. Or maybe I could pack some medicinal soups for you tomorrow to help you out. Jason's hand slowly stroked my loose hair. Hearing this, the corners of his mouth curled into an arc, his voice soft yet chilling. Belle, do you know the consequences of making me drink medicinal soup? This man really knows how to talk big. Even though I grumbled inwardly, I couldn't help but feel a bit intimidated. I stopped arguing with him. In the near future, when I regretted provoking Jason on this day, I would have already been tossed around for hours, with only a single breath left in me. Jessica must have been a top student during her school years. You could tell just by her studious and eager-to-learn attitude. That day, after my nap, I walked out of the lounge, inside the office, and saw Jessica again. She glared at me defensively. I let out a yawn. Sister Jessica, you really should stop using that foundation. It cakes on you every single time. Jessica immediately pulled out a small mirror and began frantically fixing her makeup. Then, she suddenly turned her spear toward me. You little brat! I didn't offend you today, did I? Why are you targeting me? The last trace of my sleepiness was instantly driven away. I looked at her with a half smile. Old lady, I'm giving you a kind reminder. Jason finished tidying up and happened to walk out of the lounge at that moment. Jessica's delicate brows furrowed slightly, her tone becoming mournful. Jason! She called me an old lady. I was so stunned by this déjà vu-inducing scene that I couldn't speak for a long while. Jason acted as if he hadn't heard a thing and went straight to turning on his computer. I finally snapped out of it. So what are you going to do? Why don't you call the police? As if to echo my words, Jason dialed 110 on his phone and turned the screen toward Jessica. Suit yourself, Miss Jessica. Jessica had a short fuse and a dim wit. She slammed the documents directly onto Jason's desk, turned on her towering heels, and stormed off. This time, she even left her bag behind. Out of the goodness of my heart, and also because I didn't want her to use it as an excuse to come back for Jason, I grabbed her bag and chased after her. Miss Jessica! Jessica paused for a split second, then started walking even faster. Without looking back, she snapped. Don't even think about catching up just to insult me. I really felt like her brain didn't function normally. I had no choice but to run after her. But before I could catch up, the sole of my shoe suddenly slipped. Ah! Hearing my cry, Jessica turned back and reached out as if to grab me, but she was a step too late. I tumbled to the side. My head slammed against the cabinet of a workstation. As luck would have it, this impact directly dispersed the blood clot in my brain. A second before my consciousness faded, I saw Jason rushing toward me. I am jumping through the nodes of my memoirs in my dreams. Before Jason and I entered our arranged marriage, he met Jessica. Although there was no official announcement, the fact that they were inseparable said everything. I thought Jason must have been unwilling to marry me. But the old Jason wasn't like this. On my 11th birthday, I shouted my birthday wish, out loud in front of everyone. Belle hopes she can marry brother Jason when she grows up. Everyone burst into laughter. Only Jason kept his lips pressed thin, his expression looking rather grim. The smile on my lips couldn't help but slowly fade. While no one was paying attention, I walked over and sat down beside him. Is brother Jason unhappy because of my wish? I kicked at the floor boredly, my tone dejected. Jason's young face was solemn as he gave me a serious warning. Belle, you aren't supposed to say your wishes out loud. Otherwise, they won't come true. He said his birthday wish that year had been the same, but he had done a good job of wishing in silence. He hoped I wouldn't make that mistake again. That version of Jason, however, suddenly changed. He and Jessica were praised by the family elders as a perfect match. For a time, I thought he would marry her. But for some reason, Jessica suddenly went abroad. Jason also disappeared for a while. When he reappeared, our parents arranged the marriage between us. Yet after the wedding, Jason tacitly allowed me to sleep in a separate room. He was restrained and polite toward me, acting less like a husband and more like a roommate. I always thought the one he loved was Jessica. After the anesthesia wore off, I woke up in pain. Jason was sitting by the hospital bed. He pressed the call button. When the doctor came in for the examination, Jason simply stood to the side in silence, watching me. I glanced at him from time to time, then uncomfortably looked away. It wasn't until we were the only two left in the ward again that he spoke. He stood in the shadows, and after a long silence, he asked in a cold, detached voice, "You remember everything now, don't you?" I gave a distracted hum in response. My mind was still processing these two starkly different sets of memories. Unable to hold out any longer, I soon drifted off to sleep again. When I woke up at dawn, Jason had already left. Instead, Jessica had arrived to visit me, carrying bags of supplements. "Are you okay, you little weakling?" I struggled to reconcile the sophisticated woman in my memories with the airhead standing before me. She chattered on regardless. "Wow, you're so unlucky, getting stuck with a psycho like Jason. You have no idea he actually thought I was the one who pushed you. He even had people detain me at the office." Jessica huffed, hands on her hips in indignation. "He acted like if you didn't wake up, he was going to bury me with you." I pursed my dry lips and asked her, "Don't you like Jason?" Jessica gave a soft snort. "I used to think he was handsome and had a cool vibe, so I liked him a bit. But now, I finally believe that he truly loves you. So, I'm not going to play the fool anymore." Even Jessica was saying that Jason loved me. When I had amnesia, Jason told me that he had loved me from the very beginning. I felt like someone walking into a thick fog, unable to find the right way out. Jessica seemed trapped in some terrible memory. Her brow furrowed deeply. Even now, whenever I think of Jason's blood-stained hands back then, I get the shivers. At the time, I thought he simply didn't want to be a puppet. Who could have guessed it was all for you? I suddenly looked up, my gaze shooting straight toward her. What? Isabel's family was gradually falling into decline. Jason's father believed there was no longer any need for a marriage alliance with them. Instead, he chose the Miller family, whom he had personally promoted Jessica. He had always been a controlling man and would not allow Jason to defy him. "You can start spending more time with that Miller girl now. The engagement will be at the end of the year." Jason refused decisively. In return, Jason received a resounding slap from his father. He tried to force Jason to date Jessica, but Jason stood firm on his refusal to marry her. Consequently, Jason's father gave him two choices. "You think your wings are strong enough now, but if you think you can completely break away from your old man, don't even dream about it. Either you marry Jessica like a good boy, or you have this implanted in your body for life." He held a miniature tracking chip. He intended to control Jason forever. Jason's father was cold-blooded, hardly acting like a father at all. "Jason, you've always been this disobedient. Are you trying to make me adopt a son and replace you as the heir?" 2 years ago, Jason's wings were not yet fully grown. He chose the latter. His palm was sliced open, and the tracker was implanted. To punish him, Jason's father even forbade the use of anesthesia. He had fainted from the sheer agony. Not long after Jason was discharged from the hospital, he went with me to get our marriage certificate. Looking back now, I realize I overlooked many details. For instance, for a man as emotionally reserved as him, he had a rare, lingering smile that day. Or the fact that he seemed to want to hold my hand. But I had avoided him heartlessly. At that time, I still thought the person he loved was Jessica, so I kept my distance. After returning home from the hospital, I waited for Jason to get off work while pulling out the suitcase I had previously packed when I intended to leave. I had just opened the suitcase, planning to hang my clothes back up, when Jason returned. The man carried a faint scent of alcohol. "You're back." Jason's gaze fell upon my suitcase. He put his hands behind his back and quietly double-locked the door. The words I wanted to say choked in my throat under his cooling gaze. "Where do you think you're going?" Jason stared at me, approaching with slow, deliberate steps. "Planning to go find that senior of yours?" the man asked with a faint, mocking smile. "Do you really think I'm dead, Belle?" "No, Jason." The next second, I was thrown onto the bed. Jason then pressed down on me. "You said that even if you regained your memory, you wouldn't stop liking me." I was the one being restrained, yet Jason was the humble one doing the begging. I looked into his anxious eyes. Yes, I did say that. Suddenly, I understood why Jason acted as if he were mute, saying nothing at all. He thought I liked Larry. Pride often drags people down, making the path of love a winding one. Adults do not find it easy to be candid. Jason, this time, I would be the one to take the first step. What Larry said is true. I really did have someone I liked before we got married. The hands gripping my waist tightened instantly, his knuckles turning white. Jason stared at me without blinking for a single second. I raised both hands, wrapped them around his neck, and smiled. What a coincidence, though. What I said before has come true. The people we each liked turned out to be each other. After saying that, I tilted my head up and kissed him. The man was initially in a daze. Later, he slowly came to his senses. He responded. Between our lips and teeth, his voice was strained. "Don't lie to me, Belle." I held this little puppy, shivering from the cold of an autumn rain. Even tighter, I gave him all the security he needed. A moment later, I leaned into his ear and whispered, "Jason, I've recovered my memories. Can that illness of yours be cured now?" Jason buried his face in the crook of my neck, nuzzling me intermittently. "Do you want to?" I countered. "Don't you?" If he didn't, he wasn't a man. Jason let out a low laugh. His hand began to restlessly stroke the hem of my clothes. His other hand reached for the box on the nightstand. Jessica had described Jason as a pervert. At this moment, I thought that a Jason who had been drinking was a total deviant. Trying out new tricks for the first experience made me feel like I was being forced to run track when I had just learned how to walk. "Jason, I can't." Jason gripped my hand tightly, our fingers interlocking. "You can, Belle." He kissed the back of my neck. "Have you ever thought about the floor-to-ceiling window?" I was already exhausted, but hearing his words like a sudden clap of thunder shocked me instantly awake. "No, but I do." As he spoke, the scene shifted to the floor-to-ceiling window. His gentle voice sounded exceptionally twisted in this moment. "It's thrilling, isn't it? Just like a live broadcast." I closed my eyes, thinking it might be better to just die right then and there. I don't know how much time passed before I was finally let go. This time, Jason didn't have to do anything. I wrapped myself tightly in the quilt, looking at his hand resting on the covers. I reached out and took it, stroking that scar. Did it hurt a lot back then? Jason only paused for a few seconds, before guessing that Jessica had told me everything. He kissed my fingertips, his voice light. "It was taken out in the first year. I endured it, because I was thinking about being able to marry you." Jason is a hopeless romantic. I buried myself in his arms, not letting him see my reddened eyes. Jason stroked my back and began telling me about the past. After Jason's father forced him to have the chip implanted, he began accelerating the process of undermining his father's power, gradually replacing his father's confidants within the company. He performed the blood transfusion bit by bit. By the time Jason's father realized what was happening, Jason was already the largest shareholder. It took 13 years. But Jason finally broke free from his father's control. Jessica had been thoroughly frightened by Jason. After handing over her duties to others in the company, she still chose to return to the overseas subsidiary. Before leaving, she avoided Jason and came to see me one last time. She hesitated for a long while before finally speaking up. So, do you have any recommendations for a foundation that doesn't get cakey?" I gave a light snort. "I'll send you a link." Jessica pulled out her phone. "Come on. Let me scan your QR code." Then, I watched with my own eyes as she saved my contact name as Little Loser. Fine. I was born with the virtue of reciprocity, right in front of her. I quickly changed her contact name to Old Hag. She accepted my recommendation and was just about to express her dissatisfaction with the nickname when Jason's footsteps drew near. The hair on Jessica's arm stood on end. "No way. I have to go. A guy like Jason. I feel like he'd have some pretty hardcore kinks. Good luck to you." With that, she scurried off, terrified of running into her former crush. I rested my chin on my hand, watching the man in his sharp suit. Was Jessica just here? I nodded, continuing to stare at him. Eye candy. While I was lost in my admiration, the lunch the secretary ordered for Jason and me arrived. After setting down the meal boxes, she shot me a meaningful look. At the time, I was completely baffled. It wasn't until after lunch, while Jason was finishing up some summaries in the office, that I decided to head out for a stroll. The secretary stopped me with a mysterious air. Madam, is the boss finished eating? I was quite displeased with this title that made me sound 10 years older, but she stuck to the key points. He finished it all. The secretary let out a long sigh of relief. Last time I was delivering documents to the boss, I accidentally overheard your conversation. Since both you and the boss are the type to value saving face, I had to take matters into my own hands. It's just about nourishing the body, right? I specifically ordered several highly restorative dishes for the boss. Don't mention it, ma'am. If your domestic life is harmonious and the boss is happy, there's a high probability he'll return the year-end bonus he docked last month. It's a win-win for everyone. She was the second silly big sister type I'd encountered after Jessica. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Jason had just finished work. On the drive home, I stole several glances at him. Seeing that his expression was normal, I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Perhaps the dietary supplements weren't that potent after all. But the closer we got to home, the more I realized something was wrong. Jason, are you okay? The air inside the car was heating up. I looked at the man, whose breathing was becoming slightly heavy, and asked tentatively. The next second, he executed a beautiful turn of the steering wheel and swung into the parking garage. A sense of crisis made me instinctively want to flee, but Jason locked the car immediately. I tried my best to ignore his scorching gaze and forced myself to remain calm. In this situation, I think, you should just take a cold bath like they do in TV dramas. Jason ignored my nonsense. He adjusted his seat directly, leaving a large enough space. Then he looked up, his voice low and raspy. Come here. I gripped my seatbelt tightly and shook my head firmly. I'll die. With Jason in this state, I felt like I would truly lose half my life by the time I got out of the car. The man lightly pinched the bridge of his nose. He was clearly reaching his limit. Either you come here, or I'll come over. Driven into a corner, I had no choice but to crawl over with trembling limbs. I sat astride Jason's lap. He looked up and gave me a light kiss, soothing me in a soft voice. Don't be afraid, Belle. Like hell I wasn't. After Jason carried me upstairs to the bedroom, I was ready to fall asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. Suddenly, the phone on the nightstand chimed. Frowning, I reached for it and pressed the screen to light it up. It was the secretary. Ma'am, if possible, could you please put in a word with the boss about my year-end bonus? After all, I'm a bit embarrassed to bring it up myself. At that moment, my fury reached its peak. I pressed my finger against the screen with such force I nearly poked a hole through the phone. Year-end bonus? You can forget about your bonuses for every year from now on. My movements were a bit too frantic, catching Jason's attention, chatting quite enthusiastically. I see. It seems you're not that sleepy after all. I slammed the phone aside and dove under the covers. I'm sleepy. Going to sleep right now. That night, I dreamed of my 11-year-old self again. I watched my younger self clasp her hands together and loudly declare her wish to marry Jason. Then, I told her earnestly, your wish came true.